Welcome to the Builder Marketing Podcast, your go-to source for home builder marketing excellence. Each week, we deliver inspiration, cutting-edge insights, and actionable strategies designed to help you stay sharp, reach today's buyers, and generate more sales-ready leads. Join us for real-world conversations with industry leaders who share proven ideas and tactics that actually work. And now, here are your hosts, Greg Bray and Kevin Weitzel.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of the Builder Marketing Podcast. I'm Greg Bray with Blue Tangerine.
And I'm Kevin Weitzel with Outhouse.
And we are excited to have joining us today Roland Nairnsey. Roland is the founder of New Home Sales Plus. Welcome, Roland. Thanks for spending some time with us today.
Thank you so much. I'm really honored to be here. Thanks to both of you.
Roland, I know that this is not your first time with us, and we're excited to have you back. But for those who haven't had a chance to meet you, let's still give that quick background and introduce yourself.
Nice. Okay, great. Yeah, I'm Roland Nairnsey. As you said, I founded my sales training company about 8 years ago. I do come from England originally, hence a bit of an accent still, but I started selling new homes a long time ago and managing new homes and sold almost $1 billion in new home sales, or sold and managed. So I started my training company to share that info with others. And I'm very blessed. I have builders all across North America that I work with on a daily and weekly basis through Zooms and on-site visits. And now I'm really into writing books and sharing that knowledge with as many people as I can. So just really blessed to be in this industry and sharing some provable stuff that will help you make more sales.
Well, little birdie told me we're going to be talking about your book a little bit today. But before we do that, an interesting factoid about you that has nothing to do with work or family.
Okay, I was hit by lightning when I was selling homes in Sarasota. How's that?
That's pretty good.
That's a pretty good one, right?
Lightning or just touching a doorknob after walking on
No, I was zapped. I was literally zapped. It was a rainstorm. When you're in Florida, we get a lot of storms. And my receptionist said, don't go out in the rain. You might get hit by lightning. And I made a very foolish statement, Greg. You'll appreciate this. I said, well, if God wants me, he knows how to find me. But like, what is wrong with me? I challenged God. Like, stupid, right? He's just like a stupid man. So arrogant all the time. Anyway, as director of sales, thought I was impervious to God's whims. I walked this guy out. I had an umbrella. It was raining. And he took forever to get in his Cadillac. And his leg was poking out. And all of a sudden, lightning came, went down my umbrella, and went down my arm. I screamed like a woman. I ran back inside. And the receptionist was like, told you so. She tried to warn me not to go out there, but I told my family, and I bought a lotto ticket on the way home thinking maybe my luck is really, it's a sign, I should invest in the lottery. So there we go. Was that a good one?
I firmly believe that God has an incredible sense of humor.
Yes. Thank you very much. I hope so. Yeah. Kept me around for a purpose, I hope. It was a little scary.
I'll show him.
I'll show that dude that thinks he knows everything. Yeah. No good deed goes unpunished, right? Because there I was walking out a bunch of people in the rain. I didn't have to do that.
We're glad you're okay.
Now, you did say you've had over $1 billion in sales, which is very impressive. But what builders did you touch base with before you went into the sales training side of things?
Yeah, mainly Florida. So that really is why there's a good volume there, because, I think Florida, sort of like California, has always had new home sales in their DNA. And I started selling in a place called Wellington in West Palm Beach. My family came from England in the early 80s, and there's a place called Palm Beach Polo and Country Club, which is sort of famous now for horse riding, or it was then, it still is. So I got into new home sales for a builder in 1987, before many of your viewers or listeners were even born. So I know that's how old I really am. And then I went to a place in Boynton Beach called Aberdeen Golf and Country Club. It had this hypnotic commercial that when they called me, Aberdeen Golf and Country Club, fine country club living, come home to Aberdeen. So I worked there for 10 years. We had 2,000 sales. I was one of 10 salespeople. And that's where I really wet my beak. I love that expression, because the company that owned it really invested in training. And I was one of 10. So you couldn't sell enough if you weren't trained, if you didn't follow a process. So after 2 or 3 years, the trainers came along. I was doing well, but it was the training that made it really sort of gel, if that makes any sense. So I did that. And then I managed in Orlando and Tampa. Recently, I went back and managed for a luxury home builder in Naples and Sarasota for 4 years. Homes from about 2 million to about 10 million, but a sweet spot of about 5. So all over. Yeah, and that was fairly recently in the 2012 to 2017, 2018.
Do you find that sales were more systematic then? Like you had to follow a system, whereas today it's more about understanding needs and wants and product availability, et cetera, to be able to be successful?
It's a great question. And the art to it, I mean, I think no, respectfully, it's just make it seem seamless. It shouldn't feel like you're following a process. It should feel like this right now. We're having a conversation, I hope. I'll do my best not to interrupt and to listen. I'm working hard on it. I have to count to three to make sure I don't interrupt. But no, I don't think it's really that different. I mean, I think the training maybe, yeah, there's an awareness that you can't make it look structured, but a basic format of asking really good questions, being really interested and really listening to people and proving that you're listening, that hasn't changed. How they find you, through both of you do an amazing job with generating leads and everything. So yeah, maybe they know more when they walk in. And so you're going to meet them in the middle for sure and be more adaptable. And you probably need your own social media game, I think, as a new home salesperson or manager. But the process itself, I don't believe it's all that different. I think it's understanding there is a process and have you covered all those points, but just make it seem like it's a conversation and not some structured, paint by numbers system.
So for me, that's a very interesting segue into the book that you've just released that we wanted to
Thank you.
learn more about, because your new book is about negotiation. Quite often, you're talking about a process where we're learning and we're working together. And when I think of negotiation, often that becomes a thing where there's two sides and there's more of a conflict or a battle or
Yeah.
a back and forth. Is that congruent with the idea of partnership and working together, and then all of a sudden we become adversaries and we're negotiating?
Yeah.
So what made you want to write this book? What was it
Yeah.
about negotiation that said, I want to talk more about this?
Yeah, no, a great question. And I sort of jumped the queue. So in my mind, since I started my training company, I want to do 7 books on each part, each facet of new home sales. So I did the hard work of Mastery of Selling First, which is like the chicken stock for a soup. It's the foundational 400 pages with the A to Z and a lot of stuff. And then I was going to do buts. I was going to talk about objections. I would buy, but I want to think about it. I would buy, but rates are too high. But then all of a sudden, when the market changed, I thought that negotiations seemed to be something that was more valuable for people. And I got very lucky. And I think to Kevin's point, we had this sort of structured training in the 90s. I got a lot of training on negotiation because people did expect it. And I was able to implement it in practice, sort of like Groundhog Day every day, where you try it, fail, rinse, repeat, improve, that kind of stuff. So I learned to negotiate firsthand. So I just thought, wait a minute, there's so much info that people don't know. And then to get to your point, Greg, people definitely have a bias against the word negotiation, which I love. I mean, I love to embrace that fact that shocks people. The big takeaway for me is it has to be a win-win. And I was thinking about it today that the hashtag negotiation might scare people, but hashtag win-win is a whole different proposition. I think that's the problem with people's perception of negotiation. They think it's adversarial. They think it's price apologizing. There's all these buying heuristics or biases that we have that I don't have because I'm functionally had to sell a lot of homes and buyers expected something. So I learned how to negotiate. But I negotiate out of empathy and to always create a win-win where both sides feel happy with the outcome and that they got something special from it. Does that help at all? Does that make any sense?
No, absolutely. So where does negotiation suddenly land in the sales process? Is this something that happens once we finally get to talking about price and features? Is it something that's a little earlier? Is it something that you hand off to the manager and so you don't have to do it?
It's a great point. So I wouldn't bring it up if the buyer doesn't expect it, then you don't have to negotiate. But if you're in a market or an environment where negotiation is expected, then you definitely need to know how to do it. So the reason I wrote the book, I want to put all the salespeople and sales managers in the driver's seat. So whether it comes up when the buyer walks in the door or when they start to like a model home or when you walk the home site or when you come back to recap, wherever it happens, I want the salesperson to be in the driver's seat to know how to handle it and move the sale forward. Does that make sense? In other words, I wouldn't want to mention it up front if it's not needed. The first part of my book, actually, surprisingly, the first 100 pages, which if people want to read that, they can skip to the strategy part. But the first 100 pages is teaching you how to evaluate your market, how to build value, how to create natural, authentic urgency, and how to have a pricing strategy that may or may not include negotiation. So if you don't need it, I'm not advocating you should negotiate. I'm just saying if your buyer is skilled at it and, certain cultural buyers, certain price ranges, the buyers are good at negotiation. I want to even the playing field for the salespeople and go, here's how you do it. Here's how you can implement it. But, your outcome has to be always from a place of empathy. You want to care about your customer and genuinely know about their needs. And you want to get a win-win. It's not you're better than them. We don't want to win, lose, lose, win. It's got to be both sides are really happy. That means you make a sale. That's the big thing is you get more sales by learning how to negotiate.
I do have a question for you because I see something that to me as the old sales guy, I'm alarmed at what I see. And I'm just curious if you see the same thing. Coming from the motorcycle side, it was always I want to increase that arsenal. What do I have in my toolbox to be able to pull out and, pump some artillery in a can and shoot it back? Do I have the free t-shirt to give away if somebody signs today? Do I have the free
Sure.
tire and wheel program that I can give away with the bike if they've signed for a service? If I sell the bike and I sell a leather jacket with it, can I throw in a free helmet? I
Yeah.
see an alarming number of builders that on their homepage is just incentives. Here's our
Right.
interest rate and here's our buy down. They're selling these incentives and not selling homes.
Right.
So many of them doing that is it just desperation? And then two, do you think that it's a strategic mistake? Because I personally do.
It's a great question, and I don't want to be dull, but I'm not going to judge whether it's right or wrong. If you're doing that, I want to teach you to be really good at it. So, yeah, if you're in a marketplace where incentives are out there, you're absolutely right. An incentive doesn't make people buy, it just makes real buyers buy more quickly. After the Great Recession of '08, we saw people giving away free swimming pools, whatever. But it didn't matter. People didn't want to buy their homes, so you can't bribe your way to a sale. So what I want to try to teach people is to have a strategy. There's different strategies out there. Some is to have a published incentive that drives in traffic. I'm preaching to the choir with the two of you because that's where you come from. So to be equal to some other builder, you have some kind of incentive. Is that it? Is that all you need? In the lower price points in a hot market, yeah, why would you have anything more than that or even need that? Some builders have no incentives and are fine. Or is your buyer going to expect some kind of a back pocket incentive? So you have nothing published and it's all back pocket. Or is it some kind of a hybrid where you're promoting, let's say hypothetically, your home's a 500,000, you have a $10,000 incentive on your website, users you choose or whatever, and your manager says, look, Roland, you got up to 5,000 in your back pocket, play it out and you don't need to call me, blah, 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 but that's what it would be. And that from a lot of my builders is a very typical scenario, depending on the price point and the popularity of what they're selling, is to have a strategy. But what I want is clarity with the sales manager, marketing, and the sales team to know where we're going with my sales people as a sales director. We mapped it out. I taught them how to negotiate. They would sometimes call me and go, don't worry, Roland, I've got a buyer here and we know where we're going. We're just having a fake conversation. They're watching me through the window here, the French doors or something, and they go back in and negotiate, which doesn't sound, I know that sounds a little underhanded and I apologize, but the buyer wants the game of negotiation. They want to look like they win something. So we positioned it where we could give them a win without impacting negatively our profits. And so that's a long answer to a short question. You got to be intelligent. You got to analyze your market, evaluate it. I want a clear strategy on where we're going. Could it be some part incentive, some part back pocket? And then you've got to train on the negotiation factor to make sure that you get it across the finish line without negatively impacting profits and improving the buyer experience.
So in today's market, do you find that buyers are coming in expecting to get something or very unique and individualized, or is there
No.
some general trends around that?
I think over 80% of builders have some kind of a public incentive. So if that's what's out there, that's fine, but it's not going to be enough to make the sale. You've got to train your salespeople how to utilize that and deploy it effectively. I just want to live in the real world of what we're in, not my hypothetical world. And I've sold a bunch of homes because I was able to be practical and pragmatic and adapt to the buyer's conditions, the buyer's expectation, that kind of stuff. So, yeah.
So leaning into that expectation idea, right? Buyers
Yeah.
walk in with certain expectations, and we as marketers have influence on those expectations. That's what we're supposed to be doing, right? Is we're supposed to be helping
Right.
set expectations. What are you going to get with this home? Why should you have this one instead of that one? Things like that. Where are some opportunities for marketing to help sales with better expectation setting and things there that sometimes the salespeople get caught like, why did you think we offered that? And there's this
Right.
page on the website that nobody took offline because it was over or whatever.
Yeah, no, it's a really good point about marketing and sales being on the same page. As you get bigger in a company, there tends to be this sort of detachment where marketing operates almost in a vacuum. I can't tell you how many salespeople don't even go on their websites to see what marketing is offering. And the buyer says, well, it says it right on your website. I mean, I've gone into offices and found that. So I think all being on the same page is important. But again, I sort of want to come back to having a strategy to improve that client experience. In America, in Britain too, we're not naturally good at negotiating. And so there's this sort of negative idea. It's sort of considered price apologizing. I've worked with builders, for example, well, we don't negotiate. And it's like, well, the buyer didn't buy, so you did and you lost. right? You actually had a lose-lose. You did negotiate. You said, no, we don't do that. And we have an incentive and that's it. Well, buyer leaves, doesn't buy your $2 million home, so you lost the sale. Or that same builder, we didn't negotiate, but then they allow realtors to drop off offers, which is not in my book to do. That's the opposite. One of the first rules is it's got to be face to face. As uncomfortable as that's going to be, and I can hear half of America going, "You're crazy. You don't know my market." Well, I do. I'm in them. I'm in your marketplaces, and you're going to get scolded when you tell the realtor, "No, we don't negotiate." Verbally for sure, but we don't also want your dropped off offers. We want to meet your client face to face with you and your client together, and we'll work it out. That's really where it begins, because buying is an emotion backed by logic. Give me 10, 20, whatever the number is, that doesn't make the sale. I've got to be back in the home that I'm in love with, in the neighborhood, looking at the view that I like, perhaps, whatever the hot buttons are. You've got to be brave enough as a frontline salesperson to bring them back, not give them what they're looking for. They come back with a low counter offer and they go, "What? That's crazy." Well, at some point when they're ready to put it in writing. But yeah, you got to bring them back. You got to be brave enough to get them back in the door. So really, I think your job in marketing is to be on the same page, create that emotion to get them in the door. You can't be responsible for everything. I think the salespeople and the sales manager got to be responsible for bringing it across the finish line. What do you think in your experience?
Oh, I completely agree that this idea of getting together and having that conversation changes it. People are different in person than they are
Right.
on email or phone or passing post-it notes, whatever it is.
They're so brave in their cars. They're angry at everybody.
Yeah.
Get out of the car. Let's have that conversation. Let's get in an elevator. And all of a sudden we're best friends. There's no way you're going to be so aggressive and give me this deal.
When these customers are there, and like you said, sometimes they just want to feel like they got something, that they pushed back a little bit. What
Yeah.
is the right way to kind of deal with that first request that might come from a customer? Because the guard's kind of up at that point. What's he gonna or she gonna do when I ask this question, or want this discount, or want this special whatever? They're on guard. So how do you teach to deal with that?
Yeah, it's a great question. I totally agree. What I've seen a lot is the opposite, where a buyer says, "Hey, are you negotiable?" And the salesperson negotiates against himself. "Oh yeah, we'll work with you." We've literally seen it on video shots. "Well, how much do you want? I'll go to bat." So instead of that, what we say is this a home you're interested in owning? Is this a home you'd like to own? If they say yes, great. When we go back, I'd be happy to sit down and we'll see what we can work out. If you have some kind of back pocket to work with. What normally happens is that there's this embarrassment over the whole topic of negotiation. We don't know how to handle it. A buyer says, "Are you to go?" "Well, yeah, sure," or whatever, or "No, we don't." And either way, that's a lose-lose because it doesn't move the sale forward. It is smart to say that we don't negotiate, we don't encourage it. How would you feel if you moved in and find out that your buyer's got a better deal than you? However, is this a home you're interested in owning? Yes, it is. Great. Let's pick out the home site. We'll sit down, review it, and see what we can do. If you have a little bit of a wiggle room, what that's going to be. It's smart to sort of position yourself. We're not really negotiable. However, are you interested in owning this home? If they say no, they're not interested, then why are we even going there with people? Why are you undermining that value? Does that make sense?
Yeah, and you're also not talking about something that's commoditized. Like when you're talking about a Honda Civic with this trim package, you're
Right.
negotiating dealer to dealer to see who is going to give you the best deal. When you're talking about
Right.
a home, there's so many different facets that go into that. You can't compare that they're both all using the same carpet and padding. They're not all using the same, insulation material. They're not all using the same roofing material. They don't all have the same
Right.
exact square footage. So you're negotiating against yourself, or you're negotiating against competition.
Well, there's so much to unpack in everything you're both saying. I get overexcited. I got to make notes. First of all, I think I think what you're referring to is, are you building value correctly? And I'm not going to be
Yes.
mean. I'm not a mean person. Normally, it's no, and I know that because I work with literally thousands of salespeople. We love on each other, but I'm pretty tough to say you didn't give me the benefit of what you just said. I don't know what Hardy Plank is. I do know what Hardy Plank is, but I want you to tell me about it. And why is that good for me? It's got a lifetime warranty. It means I can go out and spend time with my 17-year-old son Max because I've got to make this. Are you painting the picture of the benefit and then involving me? Are you building value for everything? The carpet, the padding, the gourmet kitchen. That word included is one of the most powerful. Well, free and included, but your home would include, you get this. Because once you build value, maybe the buyer doesn't need to negotiate. A lot of buyers, from my personal experience as a sales manager, they're actually negotiating out of confusion. I would come in as a sales director and just take notes. So, Sally, my salesperson, says, "You want this, you want this, you want this," and I'll total it up. And it's like, we're actually there. You don't need anything, but people get so confused. That's one thing, that the salesperson really isn't building value. And then the other thing is that they start negotiating against themselves. They don't have control control of the situation, and you got to close before you negotiate. Well, yeah, but I want to get a better price. Oh, okay. Well, let's sit down and review everything, and then you got to have the right questions. Well, what did you have in mind, and how did you arrive at that? There's so many tactics that I get into, 22 golden rules, but first you've got to have them fall in love with it and have built value for it. And then we all know, as you said, that it's a game. They want the experience. They feel like they won something. And my goodness, I said there was a lot to unpack there, but I don't think it's really about what's included. It's the buyer's personality style that is going to dictate how you negotiate with them. I get into that in part 3 or 4 of the book. Part 3. Part 1 is evaluate. That's 100 pages. Part 2 is all the strategies, the 22 golden rules. Part 3 is now forget all that and adapt. Are they a driver? Do they want just to win something? I got the biggest fish, or I got the best deal kind of stuff. So give them a win. And what is it? Influences, where they're expressive and fun-loving, where they just pretend to negotiate. They just want to take it home because it's shiny and they love it and they want to have friends over. If they're an S for steadiness or an amiable, then yeah, you got to go slowly. They hate negotiations, so you got to understand that and focus on family and integrity. And if they're analytic, then they're going to be looking cost per square foot. So have you built value? Are you showing them other comps? That was a bit over-explained. Probably I apologize if it was too much for one podcast, but there's a lot to unpack, but I want to put you in the driver's seat so you understand how to adapt for your buyer.
Roland, you talked about these 22 rules. Give us just a couple examples of what some of these rules are.
Sure. Okay. Win-win. I said it already, but that expectation, that means a sale. It means a great experience. In person is another rule, which is very uncomfortable, with the exception if they're serving our great country, they're overseas, then of course we'll do a Zoom. If they're really out of the state and can't come in, then yes. But if they're within 30 to 50 miles, I'm just going to be stubborn and say, let's get together and work this out. Because they're investing in their dream home. For now, I think it's up to 10 years that you live in a home, not 7 years. And so surely you can come in and spend some time and we can work this out together. And then you choreograph that experience. Let me pick some of my favorites. When you're the seller, start high, stay high, and come down slowly. And Kevin, I'm not talking about gummies here. I'm sorry to disappoint you, but thank you for laughing. I'm glad you laughed.
Start high, man.
No, but your first counter offer has to get their attention. You want them to jump up a lot. So you've got to come down in a small amount and they're going to, what? I came in for this? And then what's going to happen? They're going to realize that, look, no offense, but homie ain't playing that game. We never said we were going to negotiate. They're going to want the home, but they wouldn't come back otherwise. They're going to come back by a lot. And then one of my other favorites would be to come back with an odd number. I mean, literally an odd number. So let's say they're home coming out around 550 or 547 and change. They're going to offer 500, right? Because it's a round number, and you bring them back in. So let's say we were at 550. If I had 5,000 to work with, maybe I come back at 549, 265 and 27 cents or something bizarre like that. And I don't know what I just said. I couldn't. You have to write it down. But it was less than $1,000, and it had an odd number. I know that. And they're like, what? But what do they think when it's an odd number? What do you think they think when it's not an even number?
I think you did some serious math behind it to figure it out.
Thank you. Yeah, which of course I didn't because I just made it up. But the point being, it feels like the bean counters back at the home office really crunched numbers. That's another tactic. I was working with the buying department, purchasing, and this young man was negotiating on drywall. He wanted the price to be lower. I said, come back with an odd number. The drywall vendor immediately gave in at that number. I think per home, it was like $1,300 he saved per home. Times by 100, it was a lot. It was significant. So sorry again to everybody out there in America. Oh my goodness, this is so manipulative. Well, I don't want to negotiate. I want my buyers to buy full price. I just want to give them experience if they're going to come in. So to get them up to the higher price, I've got to come with a low odd number. And then anytime you give something back, I want to exchange something. So one of the most important rules is called give to get. If you're my buyer, Kevin, which would be a delight, and you're negotiating, I say, well, if I could get closer to that number or a number that we're comfortable with, could you close a week earlier? Could we get your mortgage approved today with our preferred lender? I noticed we're only putting 3% down. Could we go to 5%? Whatever it has to be, whether I get it or not, I almost don't care. I want to play the game of making it seem really serious and coming back and forth. So there's about 8 to 10 good exchanges that you could have. And I even cite a story in my book of one that I did in Sarasota, I think it was, where we got the sale after going around about 7 or 8 times, and end up closing for cash for $2.6 million in 2 weeks. But we were so far apart when we started, it wasn't even funny. So those are some of my favorites.
Those are great. I'm going to have to certainly dig in and learn all of them for sure. Roland, want to be mindful of your time here, but just a couple more questions if you got a few more minutes. What is the moment when you've got into that lose-lose situation and the buyer's walking away. What are the things that make buyers walk away in your experience when you're in this
That's a
back
great
and forth?
question. Well, I think arrogance on our part as a seller. I'm quite an old man now, even though with this lighting I look fairly young. Nobody will get to see it, but if I meet somebody who goes, we don't negotiate, and I'm like, I'm a couple of million, like, could you at least entertain it? If you shut it down without any empathy, I think, or trying to find out what my needs are, I think that will cause somebody to leave. So I think just your attitude is everything. Not to offend people, obviously is important, but none of this makes any sense if you don't understand how to adapt. Part of what's in the book and what I teach all the time is not one size fits all. So you've got to be very sensitive to what people are really saying and get to that level where you have empathy. People have different hot buttons. It really is very different things that aren't always logical, but we're humans, we're irrational. So there's great stories in the book with real examples of little things that meant a lot to buyers that got them over the finish line that didn't cost that much money. I mean, we're talking maybe a fence or a ceiling fan or those kinds of little things, but it's what's important to them. So having that awareness of body language is so important. Talking of which, Kevin?
So wait a minute. They're selling me this $2 million house and tell me you don't negotiate. You can't help me set up my kitchen. You can't get me a George Foreman grill to throw that in, or a slap chop, or some Ginsu knives. Nothing.
Are you saying, Kevin, that if I gave you this against your knives, you'd go ahead?
I'd think about it.
Well, let's sit down and talk about it.
I'd think about it.
So let's sit down and talk about it. You're absolutely right. I love it. By the way, look, I'm a sales guy my whole life. I just naturally am. And I love it when a buyer wants to negotiate because what? It's a buying sign. If I haven't said that already, I should have done. And so you want to lean into it. So you're saying you'd like to own the home. You just like to get this. It's in all my training. I learned it from practical experience. You don't want to negotiate on your feet. You want to close at your seat. And so Act 3 of the sales process I teach is to sit down and say, Greg, Kevin, let's go back and recap. And I want to get your buying temperature frothy and excited. So here's the location. You love it because it's only 10 minutes to work or whatever. Here's the community. You love the lifestyle. Here's your home site. Look at the view of the nuclear power plant, Kevin. You can grow those massive vegetables that you like so much. Here's the home you like. Here's the finishes. Here's your daughter's room. Let's write her name in this room. Here's the finishes. Here's the total investment. Here's your approximate monthly investment. Let's go ahead. If you're not doing that, then you can't negotiate because the buyer doesn't know what they're buying. And then once you're doing that, whether it's a finished home or a to be built, then you find out, well, I would, but I really wanted to get this. And what they normally ask for is not what they need. But as you said, Kevin, wait a minute, you telling me I'm spending $2 million, I can't get whatever, that you can't help me a little bit with the kitchen. So then you say, if I could, would you? Are you saying if you could get this, blah, 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 the Ginsu knives and the window treatment, was it?
That works, sure.
Whatever it was. So I can't give you a Sub-Zero. That's out of my budget, but maybe the Wolf range. I don't know. I'll give you a couple of burners on the range. And then you sort of like, this is going to be confidential. If we do this, we don't want you telling others and all that kind of stuff. If I can't get anything from you other than a referral, hey, Kevin, we're really there. If I could get this, could you give me a referral? Could I get some names of your friends or family? I mean, if you have friends, I'd be a little bit surprised. But if you do, it would be great.
So it doesn't just come down to the simple 3 Ps, the person, the price, and the product.
No. Again, everything is based on emotion. And by the way, even investors, I work in Miami where people are buying as investment, but there's still ego involved. But you've got different levels of investment. Is it really return on investment or is it something that you want to brag about? I mean, the ego is definitely part of it. So Malcolm Gladwell talks about mind readers. I think it's outliers. He says that, certain people have natural empathy. In sales and marketing, that's what we work on, is being empathetic. It's just like you said, it's not what you always say, it's what you react to. So when I'm in that home and I see you just getting excited about that kitchen, maybe it is the range or the gourmet kitchen, or maybe it's the view. For me, I'm a view guy, so I would just stand and stare at a lake view. If you observe me doing that, you can trade things to get me what I want. Does that make sense? Like if you're empathetic enough to go, you seem to really want the view, which is a premium view, could we take out maybe the LVP flooring in the den to get that? Could we maybe take out this? And I may or may not do that, I don't know, but I'll see you working with me and for me, not against me. Not like, no, we don't do that. It's like, how can I help you get there? There are 22 tactics in there, but it has to start with empathy, understanding your buyer's needs, and then being prepared to adapt. And then one of the final things is not accepting it normally, but making it feel like it's an offer and there's a higher authority. Like, let me put it together. We'll present it tonight to my manager and make sure. If you want to get an answer now, then you could pretend to call them or something and go do that. But at the high level, I found with the $5 million homes, when let's put it together, I want to make sure there are no surprises and make sure everything checks out. And that can prevent people from asking for more. because, some people think they've got you on the ropes. So all of a sudden they write it up and now I want this thrown in and I want a Cadillac in the driveway or something. And the extra Ginzu now, I'm kidding. But there are ways to prevent that and also to prevent buyer's remorse. Because we all know that if you make an offer and it's accepted immediately, like, oh, well, maybe I didn't offer low enough. That was too easy. Now I'm going to get buyer's remorse. So it's incumbent upon us, sadly, to play the game at a high level of negotiation and make sure the buyer feels like they really won something.
There's so many good pieces of advice here. And so obviously the next question is, where can people get the book?
Thank you. Amazon. It's so much better to buy it on Amazon because they can fulfill it quickly and get it to you quickly. So if you're okay with that, if you want a signed copy, then yes, email me and I'll sign one. But for the most part, I'd love you to buy it on Amazon. I've got a deal I put on my website that for every 10 that you buy, I'll give you one signed for free. So there's that. If you're part of a sales team, want to buy it for your salespeople, for every 10 that you get, just please let me know and I'll send you one signed one for absolutely free. So D.R. Horton bought 40 at once, so they got 4 free books. Nobody came out last week, so that was a good sign. But yeah, awesome. And Amazon, if you don't mind. Mastery of Negotiation by my weird name, Roland Nairnsey.
So Roland, if somebody does want to, learn more about you and New Home Sales Plus, what's the best way for them to get in touch?
Yeah, please email me. It's my first name, Roland, Roland at newhomesalesplus.com. Please pop me an email. I just love to chat with you and see how I can help you. It's a true pleasure to be able to help you in any way, small or large. It's going to be great. So, yeah.
Well, thank you, Roland, so much for your time today and for sharing so many tips and insights. And thank you, everybody, for listening to the Builder Marketing Podcast. I'm Greg Bray with Blue Tangerine.
And I'm Kevin Weitzel with Outhouse. Thank you.
Thank you for listening. To learn more about how Blue Tangerine and Outhouse can help you generate more qualified homebuyer leads, visit bluetangerine.com and outhouse.net. If you've enjoyed our show today, please tell a friend, leave us a review, and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. Be sure to join us again next time on the Builder Marketing Podcast.